And so therefore, at the end of this webinar, probably by the end of today, but maybe tomorrow morning, you will be able to go to the TimeLooper website and access a recording of this webinar as well as the document herein. I will also provide that to Vidette. So if she would like to post it on internal channels within AAAM, she can do that. And the reason why we do that is because we want your full and undivided attention. We would rather you not spend all of your time worrying about taking notes. We're going to go through a whole host of resources today, all of them free, capital F-R-E-E. Some of them are going to be do-it-yourself tools where you need links to other third-party providers like Google, Facebook, etc. And others are links to TimeLooper resources that we've made available for free to all of our corporate members as well. So if you don't want to worry about how to get access to that content, you can gain access to this webinar document, and all of those links are embedded herein. Additionally, if for those of you who've never been on a Zoom webinar before, you will see up at the top there is a black menu bar with a Q&A icon. Should you have a question at any point in the webinar, just click on that button and please ask your question. Do not ask it in the chat function, it will get lost. Please ask it in the Q&A bar. We will do our best to answer your questions when they're asked, but at the same time, we want to balance responsiveness to your specific question with a desire to get through all of the designated content in the appointed time frame. We only have about 40 minutes worth of content, so we should be able to get through all of the questions whenever they're asked. But for those questions that we don't get to during the presentation, I assure you we will answer every question at the end, and we will stay late if we have to, so fear not. So without further ado, we are going to jump in. Again, this should only take about 40 minutes. The two presenters that you're going to hear most from today are Yeet and me. Yeet joined me in Jackson late last summer. And Nick, who's also on our team, was not able to join, but hopefully he'll be joining us this year, Vidette, at the conference, because we are also very hopeful that it will proceed. So before we move on and talk about how to help all of you establish your digital footprints, we wanted to take a quick second to sort of align around the challenges that we're trying to solve for all of you, or with all of you. So it goes without saying that the current healthcare crisis has transformed life overnight for everybody in America and around the world, frankly. And not only has it upended our lives, but in the process of doing so, for those of us who work within cultural institutions, or those of us who attend cultural institutions or engage with them as a meaningful part of our lives, that connective tissue has also been disrupted, and that entire dynamic has been disrupted. Museums, public lands, historic sites have historic churches have historically been places of convening, places where we engage, where we facilitate introspection, where we ask difficult questions, where we try to learn about from the past and think forward into the future. Well, and in the past, that has really been done through physical hand-to-hand sort of engagement. In this world, and this world is not just defined as the immediate COVID crisis when we're under state-mandated shelter in place, but even in the next couple of months or in the next year or two, the world will look radically different. So now everybody must consider digital engagement, and what does that look like for your institution? And how can you do it in a manner that's compelling, that's scalable, and that's frankly available and free? I mean, for a lot of our institutional partners, they never budgeted for something like this. And even if they did budget for something like this, their entire financial worlds have been turned upside down like everybody else. So what is the impact of that? We've thought through a lot of these difficult questions and hope to put forward a hypothesis as to how you might be able to work to enhance your digital footprint with these constraints in mind. And so in doing that, we're really going to forward two discrete channels today that you can utilize to build your digital presence. They're both great, and we obviously are happy to answer questions about both of them, and we're going to explain both, but there's a meaningful distinction between them. The first channel is what we would call the do-it-yourself, right? So this is Tim Tooltime Taylor, go to Home Depot and get the materials yourself and build it. But there are plenty of people out there who want to build a digital presence and want to do it quickly, but they don't have the time, the resources, or frankly, they don't feel like they have the digital fluency to even get started. In that regard, we're going to talk about, towards the end, the things that TimeLooper is willing and able to do as a collaborator with your institution at no charge to your institution. So should you feel uncomfortable with all of the tools that we lay out about how you can do this by yourself, we will also talk about what it is that we're able to do to support you, again, at absolutely no charge to your institution. And it's not that one is better than the other. It really just comes down to what it is that your institution feels is most appropriate. So as we move into this, we always think that given that we have sort of laid out the landscape, the most beneficial place to start is to definitionally start with a shared understanding of what VR is. And that might sound like a silly thing to say, but everybody has their own definition. And for the sake of the next 45 minutes, we're going to ask you to sort of to come along with the shared definition that we're going to utilize, or that we believe in, which is that at the end of the day, virtual reality is about creating an environment that is presented in such a way where the consumer of that environment, of that digital content, can completely immerse themselves in another sense of place. You might have information about your historic church, about your museum, about your art installation that you put on your website, and people can consume that. But they cannot be immersed in that environment. They cannot be up close and personal with it and feel disconnected from their living room or disconnected from their classroom and feel like they are in that space. Virtual reality provides the ability for people to leave their current environment and go somewhere else. Now, that can happen through two principal forms of immersion. The first of which is if the environment in which you want to immerse people exists today, but it's physically dislocated from their current place of consumption, then all you have to do is utilize 360-degree photo, 360-degree video, or even a 360-degree, or even a high-end digital scan of your environment. Then once you've taken that digital scan, those photos, those videos, and you put them on platforms, people can immediately transport into the environment where those photos have been taken. Alternatively, if you want to take people back to 1810, 1910, 1960 to another place, a place that doesn't exist, back to the Cretaceous era, where they can, meet dinosaurs, or go 100 years forward into the future, where they can see your shared vision for how your community will change, or where you want to communicate the potential impacts of climate change on a specific environment. No photo, no video, no scan of the real world environment can project that level of interpretation because it no longer, or it has never existed. In that particular instance, you need to utilize what we call CGI, computer generated imagery, to recreate or create that kind of environment. So before we move on and talk about how to create these principal forms of immersion, we think it's important for those of you who've never actually experienced VR to get a sense for what it is that we're talking about between the, with regards to the distinction between these two forms of immersion, because it's a distinction that is important for how you might think about creating your own narrative. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to pass my digital microphone off to my colleague Geet, who's going to now also take some time to walk you through these different forms of immersion.
Thank you. So now I'm going to share the screen of my iPhone. It's connected to the laptop so that I can show you what I would like to so that you can experience and see it. And then before I do it, what I'm going to do is when I start the experience, I'm going to move my phone around myself so that you can, as you can see, a 360 video is actually has content in every direction. All right, so right now we are looking at Washington, D.C. from the top of Washington Monument. This experience is designed for the period when Washington Monument was closed. National Park Service asked if we can capture the view from the top in 360 so that the visitors can have the experience when they visit the site, but cannot go up and see what it looks like. And then this is a present day 360 capture. Now, the next thing that I'm going to show you is showing Washington, D.C. from exactly this vantage point in 1800s. Since the 360 cameras did not exist back then, it's just a recent, maybe it has been around for like 10 years now. So we had to recreate that environment in a true computer. So now I'm going to select 1800s, and then we're going to see the transition. The next image that you're going to see is a computer generated content. And then this is how DC looked like in 1800s. And then this is generated in a with true computers. And then you can add more interpretive content in this environment.
Thank you, Yeet. Lance, thanks for the shout out. If anybody has questions as we go on, please, we encourage you to ask them as we go. So then that way we can answer them as the content is being, the relevant content is being discussed. So as Yeet was mentioning, those are the two different forms of immersion that we're going to speak through today. And it's also worth mentioning that, you know, if the sole goal or if the sole capability of VR was to create enhanced visualization, that would be great, but it would be insufficient. The real power of these virtual experiences and the immersion that they provide is that they facilitate, you know, greater sense of contextual understanding and emotional connection. So, for example, one of the leading virtual reality film producers has said that virtual reality is what he would refer to as the empathy machine. Because once you're inside of these environments, you're so completely disconnected from your existing world that you connect to the story that's being interpreted in a very different way. Alternatively, we know that people, you know, remember roughly 10% of what they're told, 20% of what they read, and 80% of what they experience. So if you move away from the didactic and into the emotional, connective manner of engaging with your digital visitors, even when they're on site for that matter, then hopefully people will leave with a much greater understanding of the narrative that you want to tell, and it will stay with them longer. So again, we don't do this just because it's visually cool. We do it because we believe that there's a power in it. So then from there, I also want to mention that, you know, when you talk about contextualization and meaning, it would obviously be great if all of our users had what we would call high-end headsets at home, you know, $200, $400, $500 VR headsets. But the reality is most people don't have that hardware available, but most people do have an Android phone, an iPhone, an iPad at home. People can consume this immersive content with the hardware that they have. Let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good, especially in these challenging times. Create content. We'll talk about how it can get pushed out on various platforms and allow people to consume the content in as immersive a manner as they have the capacity to. And then over time, as hardware upgrades, as people become more familiar with these forms of communication, they will then be able to sort of enhance their level of resource immersion. So one question that we have, Yeet, that maybe I'll pass to you before we move on is, can you maybe talk through for CGI or interpretive worlds, or in the case of the Washington Monument piece, the sources of data that are utilized to create these interpretive environments?
Sure. So I think the specific question was, how did you create that 1800 view, right? So there's, for different time periods, there are different materials. But in that picture, imagine it like in the movies, you see green backgrounds. So, and then there are props and then the actors, and then there's a magnificent background, maybe ancient Rome or Egypt. So we are using exactly the same technique. And in this case, it's a technique called matte painting. So it's a drawing and 3D modeling in true computers. So it's 100% recreation. Nothing is original in that image. But in order to create that environment, we use reference materials. And then different time periods have different materials for helping us to create that content as we are working with the historians, archaeologists, interpreters. Specifically for 1800s, there was no photography from that period, but there were maps. And then we know that some of the buildings existed later on, and we know their locations. We know and then we have pictures taken to looking at that direction at a different time period. So we knew that there was nothing to that direction. So in that case, we used a combination of maps and then relatively recent time period pictures. But we have other projects that is from 2000 years ago. And in that case, archaeologists have lots of reference materials, architectures, we use them and we work with them. But also there are recent events that we depict. In that case, there's so much reference materials. Sometimes all we do is we take a 360 picture and then from present day and then make modification or overlay present day photographs. It all depends on what kind of materials we have to work with. And whatever we create, we always collaborate with historians, architects, and then to create the most accurate depiction of that visualization.
Thanks, Eat. And that's actually a really good segue. So before we get into university level VR content production, let's start with the basics. So in order to get to those more immersive forms, what we want to do is start by talking about some of the most basic kinds of VR content production that you all can produce. All you need to produce the most basic level of VR content is a 360-degree camera. No, you cannot use your iPhone or your Android phone in panoramic mode. You need a proper 360-degree camera. These are three of the cameras that we really like that are listed here. We have no financial stake in any of these companies, obviously. These cameras go from $200 to $700. Our personal favorite is the Garmin Verb 360. The Garmin Verb 360 retails for about $700. And then you buy it from Amazon. 2 days later, it's at your doorstep. You download the companion app, and then you're off to the races, and you can take 360-degree photos and 360-degree videos inside of your own environment. Once you've taken those basic 360-degree photos and videos, you can upload them to a load of free publication platforms and even embed those platform plugins into your website. So many of you know how to embed a YouTube video into your platform. You can embed a 360-degree VR content into your platform, or you can do the same thing with Facebook or Vimeo. What I want to do now is I want to show you an example from the Guggenheim Museum. So this here is...
Welcome to Thomas Edison National Historical Park. I'm glad you can join me here in Edison's library, or some refer to it as his office. He spent a lot of...
That's a very eager Park Service ranger. Sorry about that. So this here is the Guggenheim in New York City. For those of you who have been, you will recognize this. This is the top floor. And this is nothing more than a series of 360-degree photos that have been taken from inside the museum. And as you can see, I'm using click and drag like I would with my mouse on my computer to move through the environment. Then any place where I scroll over and I see an X is a place where another 360-degree photo was taken. And then the Google platform allows me just to hop from point to point. So again, this is super easy, something that you can do. You can take these photos and go to the Google Arts and Culture website and register. And then once they approve you, you can upload these photos onto their platform. What's great about this is that it's really easy to do, and all people need is a website. The downside is that I know about as much about interpretive art as I do about how to, as I do about ballet, which is to say nothing. So I'm looking at this piece of art. It's obviously incredibly famous because it's at the Guggenheim, but I'm dying for some layer of interpretation. I'm dying for somebody to tell me about what it is and why it means and why it's important. In that regard, you still don't need to advance to more sophisticated levels of production. You can instead move from doing a 360-degree photo to doing a 360-degree video. The only difference is exactly that which you would do with your iPhone or your Android phone. Rather than taking a photo, you take a video, and then you would take your director of education, your head of interpretation, your pastor, whoever is responsible for education, put them in the foreground of the environment, and then have them speak about why this place matters and why people should care about it, and also the relevance of the physical environment itself. So this is an example of a 360-degree video taken at Thomas Edison National Historic Park in New Jersey that's simply been uploaded to YouTube.
Time here in West Orange. Arrived here in 1887, spent the rest of his life till he passed away in 1931. He did a lot of work here at his desk, and as you take a look at it, you can see it's a lot of...
So again, here is the National Park Service Ranger describing an environment that otherwise I would think is intricate and quirky, one befitting of an inventor, but one that I probably wouldn't get a whole lot of interpretive meaning out of. So putting somebody in the foreground and allowing them to explain what they're looking at really enhances interpretive value. Again, buy your camera, it'll be in your location in 48 hours. You can take a video same day and upload it to YouTube 360 that afternoon, and now you're on your way to creating, you know, a VR experience and distributing it out to your community. It's really that simple. So with that, then I guess it begs the question, how should you think about interpretation inside of your environment? And the answer to that is it really depends upon what kind of environment that you have. You know, if what kind of programming is it that you deliver on site? And how can that be scaled and ported into a virtual environment? Especially for those of you who've never actually engaged in digital interpretation or digital education, start by thinking about what it is that you want people to learn when they come to your place of worship, your museum, your historic site. What is it that you want them to learn? Why should they care? Then from there, think about how you would describe that to people inside of a photo. And then from there, think about, you know, communicating themes, you know, allow people to examine primary sources within your institution. How can they do that? We'll show you how you can overlay some of the most important visual assets that you have inside of these virtual environments. Allow your docents and facilitators who otherwise talk to people person to person to talk about the most common questions or topics that come up inside of your museum. Or if you're a historic site, talk about the key moments that happened in this place. Explain why it matters. The most important thing, though, that we think for you to remember is that people are stuck at home and they're detached from their community and culture. So anything that you do will provide some enhanced layer of connective tissue. It is the perfect time to try and to fail and to iterate. Our communities are starving for anything. They're going to take it, you know, with a sense of generosity. And so you could build something, push it out there, see how the community engages with it, learn from it, and then iterate from there. So once you have thought about and begun to develop a hypothesis about how you want to interpret your environment, you can also then from there add enhanced layers of interpretation to your VR environment. So even in a 360-degree photo environment, you can build in and facilitate interaction. So as we said before, people experience 80% of something they experience and only 20% of what they read, right? So in this kind of context, making it interactive is likely to dramatically enhance people's understanding of your environment. Or if it's a 360-degree video, turn it into a movie, right? Take your living historians, take your you know, your luminaries who might be, you know, in the twilight of their lives. You know, I'm talking about, you know, people from the civil rights era. Put them inside of these historic environments and have them speak to their own personal experiences. Move it from just being a video towards being something that's a documentary. It will, or if it's, you know, something from the 17th and 18th century and you have living historians, have them reenact that period and that place, and it dramatically enhances the production value without increasing the cost a single penny. So again, I'm now going to pass it back to Yeet so he can show us a couple of examples of what these different kinds of added interpretive experiences look like. You're on mute, buddy.
Again, I'm connecting from my phone. So I'm going to show you 3 examples. The first one is how to increase engagement by using 360-degree picture. The beauty of 360 pictures is you can touch on several different topics, one, and some more controlled environments, unlike the video. So you can add, replace later on. You can, since you take the 360 picture, you can think about how to use that space by planning, by looking at your other assets. 360 video needs to be pre-planned, and then you go to the production and you have the final product. So I'm going to show you 2 examples with a 360 picture. from one, and external is just a park, natural park, outside example. The other one is an indoor example. And then they are both using a slightly different interpretation approach by using the same technique and technology. Try again. Right. So this example is from East Bay Regional Parks in around Bay Area. This project started as I would like to bring my park to my audience. Not all the schools are fortunate enough to visit my park, and then there's a huge accessibility issue. And then I have taken 360 pictures, but I do not only want to show them a 360 picture because it doesn't mean anything without interpretive content. And then this is what we created for them, with them.
That is vital for the plants and animals who make a home on these hillsides. Bountiful wildflowers can be found here in springtime, while bobcat.
As urban areas around regional parks expand, plants and animals seek out new habitats. Urban oak trees.
Here, what they did was they took the 360 picture, they sent us the picture, and then they highlighted what they want to talk about in different directions. And then we integrated in our system. So let's look at an indoor example from Washington, DC. Fourth Theater, Peterson House. So Peterson House, where Abraham Lincoln was killed, where he died, right across Fourth Theater. And then the house was closed for a period of time for renovation. And we went inside, we took 360 pictures, and then we add interpretive layer. In this case, what they want to talk about was there were people in this room on that day, and then they have the records. So now we place those people as portraits in this 360 image. And when you select them, then you start listening from them what they have seen on that day, what happened on that day.
I inquired where Miss Lincoln was and was informed that she was in the front parlor. I entered the parlor and found her there entirely alone. She was standing by a marble top.
After the president died, Dr. Gurley went to Mrs. Lincoln and told her, "The president is dead." "Oh, why did you not let me know? Why did you not
did you not come to me last night, Elizabeth? I sent for you," Mrs. Lincoln asked in a low whisper. "I did try to come to you, but I could not find you," I answered.
So this was an indoor example. Now I'm going to show you a movie, a documentary style movie. Andrew, do you want to talk about that project when I'm setting up?
Yeah, sure. So this video that you're going to see is from the Reverend King Memorial on the National Mall. This is a 2.5-minute documentary that sort of outlines the contributions of several of the luminaries from the civil rights era. This documentary was created by a nonprofit organization that brings, I think, like 50,000 students to Washington, D.C. every year. And this specific piece of content was designed to be consumed by students on that content journey to get them thinking about several of the larger questions around service and sacrifice that they ask their students to wrestle with.
It had been 90 years since the end of slavery in America, but African Americans had yet to experience full legal equality. State and local laws denied African Americans basic freedoms. African Americans could not vote or use public facilities. If they challenged the system, they faced discrimination and violence. But change was on the way. On December 1st, 1955, a black woman named Rosa Parks was riding a city bus in Montgomery, Alabama. The driver told her to give up her seat to a white man. Parks refused. Police arrested Parks for violating the city's racial segregation ordinance. In response to her arrest, the African American community launched a bus boycott. A young Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. led a movement of nonviolent resistance. City officials desegregated the buses over a year later, and King emerged as a national leader. On August 28, 1963, more than...
Thank you, Yeet. So that's an example of how we would do place-based documentary storytelling. So as you can imagine, history happened in your spaces, in your communities. You would be able to, utilize a combination of present-day place and historic footage and documents that you have, that speak to the power of what different people did at different moments in time, and then publish them. It's a really great tool because it also has the power of overlaying the present and the past. So if you want to create some of these different kinds of experiences, like the interactive panoramic guides, you can. There's a wonderful tool called Pano2VR, which we love. It is $200 a month for the license, but you can then go ahead and create those interactive products like we showed you at East Bay or at the Peterson House at Ford's Theater. Alternatively, you can pick up the phone and call me and tell me exactly what you want me to do, and I will do it for you. But again, for those of you who want to do it, it's not that difficult, and I'm actually happy to help walk you through those platforms as well. So in terms of facilitating how to place this interpretive content into the world, we would encourage you to, no pun intended, not reinvent the wheel. This is an example from the Henry Ford in Michigan, where they have a scavenger hunt. Well, the point of a scavenger hunt is to explore your physical environment. So they simply took component pieces from their scavenger hunts and then placed them into these virtual environments and asked people to look for those objects. And in this particular instance, the scavenger hunt is left relatively unscathed or in its entirety, and it's complemented by these VR experiences. And students are using the physical piece of paper and the digital environment to continue that interpretive educational journey like they otherwise would if they were at the institution. But oftentimes, like especially if you're talking about something that happened in a neighborhood, in a community, these VR experiences in isolation don't speak to the full power of what happened in the broader community. Oftentimes, you lose a sense of place because these experiences are so isolated. And so what we've done at TimeLooper is we've developed like what we would call like a map-based platform, which is an augmented reality platform that we would build for you for free, where you could place these independent VR experiences and then allow people to move through their living room, through their backyard, like they're physically moving through your community, street by street, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. I'm now going to ask Yeet to quickly share with you one example of what these look like in terms of functionality, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about different ways in which these environments can be visualized.
All right, back to my iPhone. All right, so now I'm going to tap on the app at the top left corner, East Bay Parks, and then my camera will open. So this is my kitchen, and then this is my kitchen table. So I scanned my kitchen table, I tapped, and then I placed a map. And I can adjust it, and then start exploring. So this project is again for East Bay Regional Parks. They're in the Bay Area. They have multiple parks. 2 of them are marked in here. And I'm looking at the map, and you can see my hands. So I'm holding my phone and then walking around it. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to activates one of those points so that we can zoom into that part. So now we are in a smaller section of the bigger map. To make it bigger. As you can see, this is a 3D area. These are satellite images that I'm now scanning over it. And then now I can learn more about what happened, what is important about this park at different sections. For example, let's go here.
Whether you're hiking.
So this part, for example, on the map, there is a content here, California nude superpower. So what I do is I tap my phone.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Briones Regional Park, one of the many beautiful open spaces in the East Bay Regional Park District. My name is Ashley Adams, and I work as a naturalist with the East Bay Regional Park.
As you can see, everything is in augmented reality. There's a hologram appearing in my kitchen.
In the East Bay Regional Parks, the California newt. Take a look, there's one right here.
Let's go back and then explore a different section of the map. This time, let's go here. Actually, I would like to show you another place. So let's go on this map again. Let's go, and this time we're going to zoom in to exactly this spot. Instead of seeing it 2D video information about that spot, we'll be inside that location.
Alameda Creek weaves together a tapestry of life, connecting wildlife and habitats along its path.
Is a 360 content.
Deer and bobcat.
And also you can put information, pictures. Here's another example.
Flowers are much more than colorful plants.
And also, there's no limit in terms of how big you can make these maps, which means in your area, physical area, park, city, historic site, building structures, you can actually walk in this space. And I'm in my kitchen, and I'm exploring the area. And then have a better understanding of what this landscape looks like, and then going up and then triggering information and diving in. So this is how it works.
Thank you, Yeet. So what we showed you in terms of functionality was what was a public land, but of course, you know, we're building these for cultural institutions of all stripes. And so, for example, it doesn't have to be a map. It could be a 3D model. So that that 3D model that you see there, you probably recognize as 16th Street Baptist Church. We're working with Mr. Debro and the folks at the 16th Street Baptist Church to tell their story using this exact same kind of environment. It could be an interpretive map. When I say an interpretive map, oftentimes like on a brochure for your museum, you know, your art museum, your historic site, you have like a map of your museum that people use to sort of navigate room to room. That could be the base of this platform. And then in every different spot on that map, you would then trigger a piece of content from inside of your museum. Or it could be a thematic timeline where you tell the story of a specific narrative of a person, a community, a people, whatever it is that you want to highlight. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that whatever, you know, for these platforms, that you utilize the assets that you have available, right? So this gets back to what we were talking about earlier with starting up, you know, your tours quickly. The most important thing is to develop something that can be done overnight, right? So this here is an example of what it is that we're going to be developing with the folks at Bethel Baptist Church in Alabama, where they don't have 360 photos right now. And they don't have time or money, resources necessarily to go ahead and get a 360 camera. So what we're doing with them is we're going to be deploying the regular photos from their archive and working with Reverend Wilder to create voiceover. And then when you walk up to and interact with these digital exhibition panels that are inside of your living room, you're going to hear his voice talking about why these photos, why these moments, and why they matter to their community. This is an example of something that is being created virtually overnight using their existing resources. And that's the key in these times. We want to be able to create the MLK documentary. We want to be able to create the Washington Monument over time, but those can take weeks and months to develop. This is the kind of interpretive journey, especially when you marry it with your existing interpretive content, knowing why people come to your institution, that people can deploy, that you can generate very quickly. So moving forward then, again, these are visual assets and examples of how you can scale these for your physical environment, right? It's the kind of thing that as a user you could put on your kitchen table. It's the kind of thing that you can put in your backyard, and you'll be walking through as if you're literally walking in that neighborhood. And again, in these difficult times where you don't even have the ability to facilitate this in-person connective tissue, part of what we've been talking about is all on-demand content. But really what you value and what your broader community values is that human interaction. So these tools can also be easily integrated, just like we've done today, into Zoom, Skype in the classroom, Google Hangouts. Go to your community where they are and work to engage them through their channels. Don't ask them to integrate into your platform. They don't even need to download an app. None of you downloaded an app today, but Yeet was able to take you on a facilitated tour of the East Bay Regional Parks. So if part of what you want to do, either for free or even to generate revenue, is to facilitate remote student groups or remote community groups taking tours of your physical environment, however you design it, or of your timeline interpretive narrative, you can do that by integrating through simple screen share. And again, this is all the kind of stuff that we're happy to help do for you and with you in a matter of 4 to 5 days. Once you get us the interpretive assets, it's about us quickly building the application, having you review it, and then our submitting it to the application stores, Apple and Google. And then of course, it's let's see, there's a question here. For thematic 360, for the thematic, do you need 360 photos? The answer to that is no. We do not need 360 photos. What we need to help create your digital product is whatever assets you have available. So if you have a 10-minute video inside of the basement of your church, inside of your museum, inside of your historic site, we can take that and chop it up into 60 to 90-second bits and then deploy that at different spots throughout your interpretive journey on your digital platform. If you only have, regular photos or sketch drawings, then you can create an audio recording with the memo function on your Android phone and send us that audio clip. Whatever you have available, we can utilize. But whatever it is that gets developed, it's not enough to say, I'm going to build it and my job is done. You need to actually think about how you're going to integrate this into your communication channels. So where do you engage your communities? And then push this messaging out into where they are. If you know that you were going to have 10,000 students come to your institution in the month of May, build this and then reach out to every single one of those principals and teachers and say, your students are learning from home. Let me join your students and facilitate distance-based learning on a virtual field trip. And all I need to do is to be invited to your digital environment. Or use your website. You might get 100,000 people coming to your website every month. On the splash page, say, hey, look, we're closed and it's really unfortunate, or we're open, but with social distancing, we're only letting 20% capacity. Therefore, utilize these distance-based tools, or sign up for one of our publicly facing distance-based virtual engagement events. These are really important tools to deploy to ensure that you and your community are getting the most that you can out of the creation of whatever digital assets you're creating, even if they're on YouTube 360, even if they're on Google Arts and Culture. So as we wrap up here, I want to just highlight a couple of additional things. First, what it is that we're offering you. If you want to go ahead and utilize those public resources and you get stuck, come and ask questions. We're happy to help you get unstuck based upon our experience fighting with these platforms. But if you want to work with TimeLooper, throughout now and the end of COVID, we're working to help develop all of the content for you at no cost. We're developing the app and map platforms for you at no cost. We're happy to help you think through VR conferencing and tour functionality, again, at no cost. And then whenever COVID ends, there's a monthly, retainer fee. Now that monthly retainer fee is typically $399. But if you love it and you don't have access to those funds, we're happy to support you while you go out and try to seek a grant. We will never take away an engaging and exciting platform for a partner that's using it and values it because they don't have access to financial resources. We'll work with you to help you try to find those resources. Or maybe you're a really small institution and you can only handle a portion of that monthly fee. Let's talk about that. But the end of COVID is going to be different for every institution because it's not a hard and fast rule. We're saying that everything that we provide to you is yours at least into August. And then after that point, if your city or your state opens up, but you aren't opening up, or you're running only a fraction of your tours, then we're happy to extend the quote unquote free period until you feel like you're up on your feet. And so with that, the last thing I'll share with you is here a list of resources and links to the various products that we spoke about today. Cameras, content development platforms, publication platforms. It's all here, and it all provides step-by-step instructions on how to actually upload your 360-degree photo to Facebook. And once you get this, if it's written in Latin and you just don't get it, reach out to us, and we're happy to answer any questions you have about the deployment of these platforms. So we've got about 6 minutes left, and so we want to be sure to provide some time for additional questions. So a couple of questions. Yeet, maybe you can take these. How long does the video need to be? And also, if there's voiceover, do we do the narration?
All right, for the first part, for different experiences, the video length can be different. When we think about it, if it's only a 360 video that you put on YouTube, then it can be slightly longer because you are in front of your computer and listening and maybe scrolling. But if you are using a mobile device, a smartphone or a tablet, then from a user experience perspective, how do you engage with the environment, and then how long you will be paying attention, and then what that specific content's role in the overall storytelling. So for the map experience that I showed you, let's say it's your museum, it's your site, and you want to tell the story, or maybe it's a panel. So the recommendation would be having multiple videos, whether it's 360 or 2D, or maybe a picture with a voiceover, and then making each content, each piece, not longer than 90 seconds. So that I'm going from content to content, and then every hologram, every object, physical object, tells me a little bit of the story, and then dive in, I learn more. The other thing that we need to pay attention is during this period, the COVID period, one of the reasons why we can offer this for free is we streamline the process so that we can help as many institutions as possible. Today, right now, more than I believe 70 institutions, right now we are building these apps and we are building them offline. Offline app means, unlike in like YouTube, you click and you stream video. In this case, all these content will be inside the single app so that we can build it and send it to App Store very quickly so that you can have it. So then we have to be mindful about the size of the total app. And then in that case, we are talking about like 12 to 15 minutes of video time in total. And then ideally you break that into different pieces and then people go point to point. In terms of the narration, we can work with professional voice artists and then it has a fee, and then that fee could be $100 to $150, sometimes $200, usually depend on the artist. Or you can do the narration, and then that narration is also very simple right now, since most of the people are locked down. What they do is they create the content, they do the voiceover themselves in a quiet room, they send us the files, and we also clean those files, and we go live. And then after COVID, we can look at it, maybe work with a voice artist, maybe use different voices for different sections to make it more dynamic. But you don't have to do the narration by yourself, but it will be faster and cheaper if you do it yourself. And then many of our clients are doing that way right now.
So we do have time for a couple of other questions. There's just one other thing I'd like to, Vidette, please go ahead.
I don't really have a question, as more as I would like for you guys to discuss how you help your clients with grant writing. We didn't have it at our conference, or maybe all of your flyers just miraculously flew off the table, which I'm pretty sure they did. But when I was at SCMC's conference, you guys had the flyers about how you will help with that portion of grant writing. I would really like for you to discuss that, and then maybe some grants, like if you're working with, if you're working with Puro on the African American Civil Rights Grant for the National Park Service. I don't know where those funds are coming from, but it would be nice to know, so our members would know like what they're looking at.
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who are not aware, and Nick is going to post it into the chat, as part of the response to the federal response to the pandemic, they passed a piece of legislation called the CARES Act. Embedded in the CARES Act is like the payroll protection that we all know of, for small businesses. Embedded in that is I think $1,200 for every American adult, et cetera. Also included in that is a special grant program that's being administered by NEH, the National Endowment for the Humanities. This is a program that, unlike their annual program where you apply in May and the program year doesn't start till the following summer, this is a program that, like everything else that's going on with the CARES program right now, is designed to be expedited. And part of the beauty of this is that the application process for the NEH CARES program is only 3 pages long. And if you've ever done an application for NEH, NEA, IMLS, which are the big grant programs for museums and cultural institutions, they can literally run to the 30 to 40, 50 pages. So Nick posted the link for the NEH grants program. Whether you work with TimeLooper or you work with somebody else, or you just need it for continuing operations, we highly encourage you to take a look at the availability of funds, because the funds will be the applications are due in early May, awards will be made by early June, and the performance period, meaning when the money will be spent, has to be completed by December 31st. And this program is entirely about supporting cultural institutions in their response to COVID, whether it's through digital engagement platforms, support for salaried staff, a whole host of different things. So that's a great program that is, unlike the typical NEH programs, is very responsive to the times, and they're moving quite quickly on that. The downside of that is you only now have, I think, 12 days to get your applications in. And I think that the awards are targeted to be, if your annual budget is under $300,000, you get up to $30,000. If your budget's between $300,000 and $3 million, I think it's 15% of your total operating budget is your maximum award. And then if your annual operating budget is over $3 million, your capped award is $300,000. And then, of course, the other grants that we work with our partners generally outside of pandemics, which is not necessarily our specialty, are NEH, NEA, IMLS. We provide you with a whole host of resources. We help you think through the interpretive journey. We help you think through the technology that's required. We help you to scope out the entire budget. You're the one who has to submit the grant application, but we help provide a lot of support along the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's right. And as Vidette mentioned, there's also the NEH Digital Humanities Grant that's due in June. But if I'm not mistaken, Vidette, that has the more typical long gestation period, where those are you have an availability for much larger awards, yes, but those awards won't be made available until 2021.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So. All right. Well, we want to be respectful of your time. And it is 3:02 or 2:02, depending upon where you are. So we're 2 minutes over. We will stay if any of you have questions. Otherwise, these materials, both the video and the presentation, will be posted to the TimeLooper website by tomorrow, timelooper.com/webinar. Vidette will also have them. I will make them available to Vidette in the next 90 minutes. And then whenever she posts them, they will be made available to you. Alternatively, feel free to email us or go to timelooper.com to learn more. And we thank all of you for your time. Vidette, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you. I feel like this is very timely. I love what you guys have presented us, not just today, but what you present to us at our conferences. And Andrew, just thank you so much for your due diligence and just being a real friend. It's one thing to have corporate sponsors who are here and leave, but you guys are not just in it for the money. You're actually doing what people are supposed to do, which is thinking about members, thinking about building relationships, and having a genuine heart. So I thank you and your whole team for that. I'm sure that our members are super grateful just to have this connectivity to you, and for you guys to open up your doors and just say whatever questions you have, please bring them to us. I actually wish I had a site for real where you guys could do some work for me, but I don't think anybody wants to be bored about Vedette's house. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. Thank all of the members who are on the call today. I truly appreciate you taking time to just see what Andrew and team from TimeLooper have had to say. I hope that you were as intrigued as I was, and there were so many moving things. I asked Andrew specifically, I said, can you do some stuff that, makes it a little bit more for our members? And he said, I got you. I was already going to do that anyway. You don't even have to talk to me. So to have that same brain is really great as well. So I thank you. We'll look for the website, and then we'll look for the link. But what I'm also going to do, Andrew, in addition, is I might not put the video on our website. I might just link everybody to your website and the link. So that's, thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.